Welcome back again, adventurers, to Let's Play ChäoS. In the last episode, Takumi Nishijo huddled up back to his base and tried to figure out what exactly was going on with @channel. Unfortunately, to his irritation, the only topic of news seems to be nothing else but the infamous New Gen murders, and unfortunately, this gossip has even reached the chat room halls of Ensu, which definitely irritates Takumi to no end. Although against his better judgment, Takumi did explore the New Gen wiki site to learn a little bit more about the gruesome details of the New Gen murders, and is surprised by the fact that for such disparate events, they are all being labeled under the same appellation, at least on social media, in any event. But as much as he would love to avoid being dragged into the whole situation, Takumi is still bound by the fact that Yua's accusation against him is still being held against him. So in order to try and clear his own name, he's going to try and have a closer examination of the infamous photo that was sent to him by Shogun himself. That of course brings us to the Shibuya Police Department, where Yasuji-ban has just arrived to one of their internal meetings on the case. The meeting to discuss the investigation of the Maruyama-cho staking homicide had begun, and everyone glared at Ban when he came in late. Yeah, looks like the other detectives aren't big fans of Ban, and probably the feeling is mutual, but I digress. Smiling amiably, Ban lowered himself into a seat at one of the tables lined up at the front. The room didn't have the kind of atmosphere where he could say his reason for being late was because he'd gotten the runs and been cooped up in the bathroom. I hope that's not the reason why he was late, and it probably isn't. In the wee hours of the morning after it occurred, the Maruyama-cho staking homicide case had been assigned to the Shibuya Police Department, which now housed the headquarters of the investigation. The investigation division, already busy with the Cornelius Tower Group suicide case and the Shibuya Station college student and fetus homicide, were forced to recruit even useless third-rate assistant inspectors like Ban from the central Tokyo station. That's going a bit harsh, even if Ban might be somewhat inept. Although, as you can see, the police have different appellations for the various murders, unlike the more sensationalist monikers being used on @channel. Moreover, since everything had taken place in the area under the Shibuya Police Department's jurisdiction, they were caught in the bizarre situation of having three special investigative headquarters located in the same station. In other words, there is a cross-jurisdiction issue here, which is definitely not going to help. It was thanks to this that the three investigation teams were forced to take turns using the station's big conference room. There were rumors that since the media had been cultivating the New Gen label and the police were short-handed, the three teams might be combined into the New Gen investigation headquarters. All the detectives thought this was a moronic idea, no better than a gag.
警部補、君の報告を。
Inspector Masunaga Barnes' boss and the person responsible for their investigative team looked at Barnes sharply as he addressed him. Yep, it looks like Barnes really is a lowly assistant investigator on the police hierarchy. Paying him little heed, however, Barnes flapped a fan at his face and took a breath.
警部補、バン警部補、聞いているのか？
呼ばれてるっすよ。バンさんの報告待ちなんすから。ちょっと。
Hello, young man in a conspicuous blue suit and tie. We've glimpsed you before. Outside of Suwa Academy, which basically means that whoever this individual is, and we're probably going to learn his name soon, is not a teacher at all, but in fact a young member that's part of the Shibuya Police Department, and probably to make matters worse, is probably Barnes' lackey or errand boy. When the newbie sitting next to Barnes, who also happened to be his partner Suwa, hissed into his ear, Barnes finally realized he was being called on.
すんません。報告は諏訪から。
Yeah, Barnes definitely does have a very unkempt, disheveled look to him, and probably an attitude to boot.
自分っすか？
俺がいなくても報告しとけって言っといたろうが。早くしろ。
After Barnes elbowed him a little, Suwa let out a short sigh and stood up energetically.
犯行現場近くの監視カメラの解析がようやく出たっす。出ました。犯行時間に不審な人物が映ってました。
Huh. So there was a surveillance camera there, and a suspicious person has been caught on film. The meeting room stirred. The slackening air underwent an instantaneous transformation. The Shibuya Station detectives, seated along tables at the back of the room that faced Barnes and the others from the central station, began urgently taking notes so as not to miss a moment of Suwa's report. They were desperate, given how long the investigations have been dragging on for. After all, with 2 savage murders having occurred in a single month, though the group suicide had not yet been conclusively labeled a homicide, it was natural for them to become prepared to stake everything on seizing the perpetrator, even their reputations.
プロジェクターに映像を出します。
As Barnes had previously instructed him, Suwa aimed the projector at the screen. It's fairly grainy, but then again, probably shouldn't expect too much from a surveillance camera. A black and white film of one of Maruyama Cho's narrow, filthy alleyways was reflected there. It was hard to see anything, given that it was night and there were few street lights. There's only one part of the area that's illuminated.
犯行現場から約50メートル離れたところにあるコインパーキングの監視カメラです。
The coin-operated lot was small, as it had room for only 2 cars. It had been unjustifiably constructed in the tiny space between buildings. It is quite narrow. One could not see the crime scene in the field of the camera's picture. One couldn't even see the road that crossed in front of it. Yeah, the Yeah, the crime scene is pretty much around the corner to the right, but that's obscured. What the film showed was a certain street about a block away from the crime scene. On a side note, there was no sound to accompany it. It looks like this is a fairly old-style surveillance camera. The time of recording was neatly displayed in the lower right-hand side of the screen. It currently read 9:34 p.m. That's probably going to be a very significant detail.
犯行現場近隣の住民の証言により、21時過ぎから21時半頃まで釘を打ちつける音がしていたというのはご承知の通りだと思いますが、
Well, that seems to be fairly consistent so far.
この映像は21時34分、つまりまさに犯行時間直後ということになります。不審人物が映っているのは21時34分53秒からおよそ6秒間です。駐車場の前の道を奥から手前へと走り抜けていきます。
As soon as Suwa finished his explanation, a human figure emerged into the picture. Acting considerably flustered, it dashed from the depths of the screen to the foreground. Due to the poor resolution, a brief shot like that wasn't enough to let anyone determine whether the figure was male or female. However, Barn had already asked the forensics division to analyze this for him.
科捜研で解析した結果、映っている人物は男、年齢は10代後半から20代とのことっす。です。
I'm starting to get a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach here.
人相の判別までは無理でした。服装がかなり特徴的ですが、これは小島にある私立水明学園の男子制服と分かりました。
Oh dear, that's even more foreboding.
それと右手に注目してもらいたいんですが、
The picture zoomed in on the suspicious figure's right hand. He appeared to be gripping something.
スローで再生するとわかるが、走りながら腕を振っている際、この握りしめている何かが駐車場の照明に反射して光を放ってるんだな、これが。
Barn took over for Suwa right when things were getting good. In other words, he too was not immune from hogging the spotlight from time to time.
形状からして犯行に使われた十字架型の杭である可能性がある。
The detectives grew noisy again. To think that the perpetrator of the staking homicide might be a high schooler, it was a minor shock to them. It meant that the mass media's inflammatory catchphrase, the new generation madness, could very well have become reality.
最も犯人に近い人物がこの少年だということか。
そういうことになりますね。
Ban rubbed his unshaven chin. It was a habit of his. When he sensed that he'd driven a wrongdoer another step into a corner, it pleased him to make sure of that ever-prickly sensation.
以上です。
Suwa let out a deep breath and settled back down. Yeah, I'm not liking this.
ひどいっすよ先輩。美味しいところ持ってって。
You might want to correct your spelling there because it's not senpai, it's senpai. It's with an N, not an M. Just thought I'd point that out. Although you're right about Barnes swiping the limelight. Disregarding Suwa's complaints, Barn once again looked into the projector, so as to burn the male high school student's figure into his eyes.
ようやく尻尾を出したんだ。そいつを掴んで離さねえようにしないとな。
That is ominous. Which brings us back to Takumi's base. As he tries to find the photo. As expected, the image file Shogun had sent me was in the folder where my cache was kept. A JPEG file by the name of 168491. Hesitation was born of the fact that I really didn't want to see it still lingered inside me. It was such a gory and sickening image. Once I looked at it, I wouldn't be able to keep my mind from calling up associated memories of the scene of the staking murder I'd seen in real life. No, but I had to do it. To prove you were wrong, to guarantee my own safety, and to assert my innocence. As Yoda said to Obi-Wan Kenobi in Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, if into the security recordings you go, only pain will you find. Seratan was watching over me, so I'd have to try and enduring the Gura factor for a little longer. Mustering my courage, I double-clicked to open the file. There's the staking homicide, but no matter what, it was still foul. But it wasn't such a big deal compared to the staking I'd seen as person. And if I thought of it as a composite, I could just barely bring myself to tolerate it. When he'd first sent it to me, I'd only taken a fast look before closing it. I hadn't scrutinized its every nook and cranny. This time, fighting back nausea, I examined the image closely. I didn't know how to tell if an image had been shopped, as in photoshopped, but I figured it would be okay if I looked at things like the direction of the shadows and if anything in the scenery felt off. One possibility was that it had been created by combining previously taken background photographs with the CG version of the pinned-up corpse. And the day after Shogun sent it to me, the murderer had put the killing method this photo illustrated into action. Due to the pixelation and the dim lighting of the nailed-up body shown in the photograph, I was only able to make out the stakes and couldn't see much of the body itself. The light hit the area only around the pinned-up corpse, making it seem as though the staked parts were saying, "Come on, look at me, please." It felt like the person who made the picture had intentionally arranged it that way. For starters, it was kind of overdoing it to solely spotlight the body. That is, unless the criminal wanted the body to be found. Well, I hadn't closely studied the actual crime scene, so I wasn't really in a position to say anything. In the photo, that demon girl wasn't standing in front of the nailed-in body. And that should be a very telling sign. Yeah, she's not there in the photo. But if I stretched my eyes wide and stared unblinkingly at the image, I began to see something shaped like a person in the darkness along the left edge. somebody that's obscured in the lower corner. I've been in danger of overlooking it. The photo's graininess and the fact that they were standing in the shadows made them completely dissolve into the background, and you wouldn't stand much of a chance of noticing it with just a glance. This had to be shopped, but maybe the person who made the photo had accidentally entered the frame when they were taking the pictures, and then forgot to erase it when they were manipulating the rest of the photo. Whatever the case, the figure appeared to have on a Suwa uniform, which meant that it was the demon girl, for she too had worn the Suwa uniform. But when I strained my eyes even harder and looked at the figure in the photo again, it seemed to have short hair. The demon girl had long hair. This would knock Yura out of the running as well. And with those two eliminated from the photo... Alrighty, let's try using some image editing software to make it easier to see. Opening up the editing program, I dragged and dropped the picture, and after a single convulsive breath, I selected Adjust Levels from the menu, and brightened the image's dark parts. Behold the reality of the photo you are now witnessing, Takumi Nishijo. For if you thought that the photo would absolve you from this, that you would be finally free of the new gen madness, that you had absolutely nothing to do with this whatsoever... What's this? Yeah, you would be wrong. Dead wrong. The one photograph there, no matter how you looked at it, the one photograph there... Indeed. Why was I there? It was outlandish, because I hadn't gone to that place once since September 29th. This had been shopped in too, no question about it. I couldn't find the slightest evidence to prove it, but it was obviously a composite. If not, it'd be crazy. Well, sanity has already thrown itself out the window, and we're not in Wonderland or Kansas. Yeah. Believe it or not, Takumi, this photo we're looking at now was in fact a glimpse of the future. Although Yua doesn't really realize the significance of that fact, and neither does Takumi. Besides, Shogun had sent me the image on the 28th, and the staking murder had occurred on the 29th. If this picture was a picture of the same place where the crime took place on the 29th, my being there would make it a photo of the future.
あなたには予知能力がありますか?
And thus Yua's words finally have worked. Kicking away one of the empty plastic bottles at my feet, I closed the image editing program. I opened the JPEG file properties to check the date it had been created, and I've been shocked. It had been created on the 28th, but that had already stopped mattering to me. That would matter very much to you and the police, because that photo is a photo from the next day, but yeah. Everything that happened in that photo unfolded exactly as it was meant to. A single sentence written in the comments field of the properties window so not as to stand out. It was that which my eyes had become nailed to. That phrase again. Whose eyes are those eyes? A phrase that Shogun knows, and a phrase that has been appearing ever since this all started. I hit the keyboard, pushing it to the edge of my desk, and cradled my head.
セーラ助けて
Hate to disappoint you, Takumi, but she's just an anime action figurine. A two-dimensional character. I held back welling tears. This whole week had been full of one incomprehensible thing after the other. Why was I the only one who had to suffer like this? Wait a second. If he'd gotten his hands on my picture and combined it with this Guru image, Shogun had at the least either surreptitiously photographed me beforehand or acquired my picture somewhere or other. A photo of you running away screaming like a complete coward. And remember the fact that the police found the fact that Takumi actually held one of the crosses in his hand, which he had when he was running away in the actual event. The very same cross that Yua would ultimately stumble upon in her investigations. Although him running away from the crime scene with one of the stakes in hand is probably not enough on its own to pin him to be the criminal. But that doesn't matter to the police. They have finally got a definitive suspect that they can persecute. And that individual is none other than Takumi Nichijou, the one person who wanted to avoid this whole craziness from start to finish. Going by how he'd entered the chat room and waited for Grimm to leave before he started talking, he must have been targeting me from the start. Maybe he had access to my personal information. If so, it wouldn't be odd if Shogun and the demon girl came to attack me at any time. They'd abduct me. The back of my neck prickled. It was that gaze again. I was watched by someone. Like hell I turn around. The "it'll take more than that to make me turn around" game. A game that once again you're probably going to lose. Terror covered my whole body in goose flesh, and I longed to go up to the door and make sure it was bolted. But I would lose if I turned around, so I went on stubbornly staring at my monitor. Unable to settle down, I opened some word processing software and began typing in my thoughts. Trembling a little as I looked at the word demon, I began to wonder if maybe the girl at the scene of the murder really had been some kind of devil. It's incredibly far-fetched, but a lot of strange stuff has been happening. Yeah, she couldn't possibly be human. If so, maybe she could see the future. It would be a walk in the park for her to transfer a vision of the future into a picture via spirit photography. Nor was there anything wondrous about the fact that she carried out that dreadful staking by herself. she'd used her subordinate Shogun to send me data, since she knew I would coincidentally cite her at the crime scene. I didn't know the reason why. Perhaps to intimidate me, a threat to make me think I'd end up the same way if I told anyone. Or else advance warnings of her next murder. A death sentence. I'll kill you next. If that were really the case...
勝てるわけがない。僕は奴らにいつ殺されてもおかしくないんだ。
Yeah, things have definitely gone from bad to worse. Much worse. And we're with Yua. Yua Kusunogi had been in her room, facing her PC. Viewed in profile, her face was deathly serious as she swiftly read through the news displayed on the monitor. At last, she let out a small breath and released her mouse, letting her eyes fall momentarily to a piece of paper placed not far from her hands. It was a printed version of the backlog of the chat between Neidhart and Shogun. The same as what she'd pushed at Takumi Nishijo yesterday.
西条くん、
His name fell from her lips. The image of Takumi's back, as he sat alone on one of the benches in Shoto Park, floated up in her mind. As though to erase it, she soon gave her head a little shake. Catching her breath, she whipped around to her back.
今誰かに見られていたような。
Huh. So it looks like Takumi isn't the only one who is sensing the gaze. At the end of her gaze lay the large stuffed Gero Froggy enshrined at the top of her bed. Why is Gero Froggy such a thing? She tilted, wondering if she'd been imagining things, then got up, walked over to her bed, and flopped down on it face first. The sheets smelled like sunlight. Her mother must have hung them out to dry during the day. Burying her face in their reassuring scent, Yua let her eyes wander absent-mindedly. Her extremely tidy room revealed her meticulous personality. Again, completely at odds with the likes of Moroka Kiryu from Steins Gate. Especially the enormous bookshelves, out of place in a mere 8-tatami room, which were lined up with numerous books and had hardly a gap between any of them. Amusingly, though, the bottom half held difficult-looking scholarly books and scholarly texts and PC-related books. The top half was buried in shoujo manga and anime DVDs. Yua let out another sigh, rolled onto her back, and gazed at the ceiling.
DID。
I was going to ask what that was, but dissociative identity disorder. And I actually didn't read that previous part. Even now, an explanation of it was displayed on her monitor.
辛いんですね。
In other words, Yua Kusunogi believes that Takumi Nishijo had created Shogun as a multiple personality. Now, going back to the transcript says that Yeah, that transcript says that Neidhart had replied on the 30th and Shogun had replied on the 29th. But if she looked at the photo on Takumi's computer, it would say that the photo itself was created on the 28th, before that supposedly happened. In other words, it would throw the time discrepancies would throw everything for another loop. But I doubt that she's going to find out about that little detail. You were thought of, Takumi, as she hugged the Gero froggy that sat near her pillow.
でも、私、
Yet her face soon emptied the royal expression, and she gritted her teeth. And back to Takumi. With the absolute haunting revelation now firmly in his mind, there is very little that Takumi Nishiyo can do, and there are very little places in which he can actually run to at this point. So that is going to be it for this episode of Let's Play ChäoS Head, and when we return, Takumi literally has been driven into a corner. It's only a matter of time before either the police, or perhaps even the new gen criminal, comes after him. As always, adventurers, until next we meet.